So I ended the last episode with the seventh concentration, which is home cooking. That concentration is really good for having what we need and learning what our bodies specifically want. We are seekers and scientists with a goal of optimizing our health the most delicious way possible. Home cooking from scratch also means knowing precisely what we're eating. Then we have that much more sovereignty over our nutrition with choices informed by our own mindful research on what foods are best for us and evidence-based science. Our biochemistry can vary so much that what works and feels good to you may not for someone else. This concentration is in mindful experimenting and constantly improving our ability to make food choices both ideal for our bodies and deliciously rewarding. The eighth concentration is to enjoy it. Part of this concentration can be planning and preparing food for this purpose. What kinds of food do you personally enjoy that are also what your body wants? The more success we continue to have with the seventh concentration, the easier and more satisfying this concentration becomes. We get good at what we personally like best and what our friends and family enjoy with us too. Let's not just throw things together or grab things on the go just to feed on them with the lack of enjoyment similar to taking a pill. I know I say food is medicine, but it should not be as boring or unpleasant if we can help it. If we do that too much, we can lose interest in this art form for survival and well-being. I recommend taking advantage of these modern times with your internet access to amp up your enjoyment of food. These days we can find recipes from all over the world. We can find others who like to eat the way our bodies feel good to eat and who can also make it delicious. We can give each other ideas like never before. Even very picky eaters, or those of us who have discovered sensitivities to several foods, can now find very specific ideas online. Keep a book of recipes for the purpose of enjoying food more. Find and refine them with experimentation. Share them with your friends and family and start encouraging them to share with you. Concentration 7 and 8 don't necessarily mean becoming a foodie or totally falling in love with the culinary arts and wanting to become a chef. And that doesn't hurt, but you can connect with enjoying food enough that it increases your desire to be mindful and present with it. So imagine now that you have been paying more attention to food for the purpose of both health and enjoyment. Imagine you've been doing this for a while now and are starting to feel clearer and more capable of focusing on concentration 7 and 8, measuring successful results with everything from more enjoyment to more energy, clarity, calmness, and overall health and well-being. How do you feel when you imagine this right now? So then contemplate how often you have plenty of food. If you have more than enough, imagine sharing it with others who may or may not have enough. I love all of our traditions that marry the concept of gratitude with our eating. I imagine constantly finding new ways to make good food, don't you? As with every one of the 10 concentrations, sit with this. Direct your concentration on a rampage of appreciation. What is a rampage of appreciation, you might be asking? Well, how many things about eating and drinking, food and all that comes with it, can you list, either just in your head, spoken, or written, that you can say actually bring you joy? This is an example of a rampage of appreciation, which is one way to concentrate on number 8. Of course, another is eating and drinking. If the food is good and it makes you feel good now as well as later. Remember that stuff. Appreciate your own ability to expand your range of knowledge, trying a rainbow of foods. If it's good, sit with it, and remember to slow down for this stuff. Savor it. Share it. Make enjoying your food a primary goal for every meal that you take. And forgive those creations and experiments that miss the mark. Just remember them. So for this concentration, we don't just eat whatever there is, not knowing until mealtime what we will eat, unless we are in the habit of having an abundance of fresh choices available. If so, then again, cheers to your abundance. Over time, with the 8th concentration becoming our mindful routine, we will find that we're thinking about food more and thinking a few moves ahead. Finally, when concentrating on number 8, don't let getting bored with food even be an option. If you can prevent this, then you're both getting more variety of experience and likely also being quite successful at this concentration for mindful nutrition. The 9th concentration is life balance. Concentrate on everything in your life that influences your mindfulness with nutrition. So rest and good sleep, as well as anxiety and stress management, make a big difference in our efforts to maintain the 10 concentrations. This can affect our appetites. And when we are rested, we are more conscious, alert, present, and mindful. We are also much more patient and have better memories. All of this helps when we want to be present to enjoy our food, remember it, plan our meals, and make mindful choices. Fatigue can sap all of the color out of our experience with food. We might make lazy choices or even crave more sugars to combat fatigue. Maybe we then tend to go for caffeine to race sugar into our cells for a swell of ATP production and energy just to crash later and crave more fast energy. This can result in more extreme fluctuations of blood sugar, and this can result in more intense cravings. It's a vicious cycle, which if maintained, can be harder and harder to break. Prolonging this may also be followed by insulin resistance and eventually damage to our pancreas, blood vessels, etc. I know not everyone who experiences fatigue goes for the self-medication though. We can all guarantee we will feel fatigue as part of our lives, and yet some of us will sit with it. Some of us will work on setting a life pace to minimize the erratic nature of this insulin roller coaster and the stress it causes our bodies and minds. Sit with your fatigue, and when you can, let it take you, and take some time for you. If you want help improving the depth and quality of your sleep, please contact me. I have a drug-free program for reducing anxiety and improving sleep. Just give me 2 weeks for the rest of your life. So we want to balance our rest and sleep with the food we eat as well as our activity. You know, the amount of fuel needed by one person can be vastly different than another. Of course, one reason is their mass. Another is their metabolism and everything that influences that. Activity level is a big influence on metabolism. I hope that you can all find a way to move and use your bodies. I know it's much easier for some than others. You may have injuries or health issues that prevent you from certain activity. This can be a major obstacle to this concentration, and I strongly advise that you seek good advice from your healthcare professional if you even just might be at risk when engaging in athletics or, in some cases, even low-impact limbering exercises like yoga. This is where I feel like I have to jump in and re-emphasize my disclaimer. Anything I'm saying here about wanting you to move and push your body in general is not medical advice. And if you have any doubts about engaging in even the simplest low-impact exercises, please check with the best physician that you can find. With that being said, mindful nutrition can result in some reductions of inflammation. When we are detoxifying and eating what our body wants, it does not have to work so hard to take out the trash. And because of it, less trash builds up, for example, in our joints or sometimes in places our body have previously sustained traumas. Efforts to recover from traumas may be enhanced with mindful nutrition. Recovery from workouts, walks, hikes, runs, swims, dancing, bike rides, etc. is also improved with mindful nutrition. When you're including athletic activity into your balance with food and rest, it's important to know how hard you want to push yourself. Do you notice that you go on a health kick where you push yourself hard, but then you don't always keep it up? Is it always a diet and fitness routine that you engage in for a hot minute and then let it go? I recommend seeing our fitness efforts as a long run rather than a series of sprints. Mindfulness regarding nutrition and fitness is certainly being present in the moment, but also think about the pace you're setting in that moment. If you set a slightly more moderate pace than the one that you do when you go through your health spurts, do you think that you might be able to maintain that pace without taking long breaks for recovery? Now, if you're really driven to push yourself, I also want you to feel for when it may indeed be the good time to take an extended break. In my 6-month Gold program, we do this for the first week of every month. Those days are for focusing on relaxation and sleep, as well as reflection on your ongoing self-coaching pace. Each restful week is also for entertaining the idea of increasing our level of activity after the week is up. Ideally, we can set a pace that is not so much like a sprint that we collapse from it afterwards, but a long run where we are slowly but steadily climbing. And what I mean by climbing is we can get comfortable at a certain pace, but if we also regularly push ourselves just a little bit, we can make a lot more progress in health transformation ongoing for life than sprinters tend to do. Maybe we can add a little more resistance to our strength training routine, or walk for a little bit longer, or maybe even hike more uphill slopes. Whatever fitness level we're at, even if it's just adding a few more crunches or something as grand as working up to running a quarter marathon or a whole triathlon, the details, distance, and pounds don't matter as much as, can you say that you are constantly moving and using your body to the extent that you can measure some kind of improvements in strength, limberness, balance and coordination, discipline, or endurance? If you can maintain slow, moderate, consistent improvement rather than sprinting and sometimes even going backwards, then you are mindfully balancing your activity with your food and rest. We also have to include hydration in this balance. How many chemical reactions do you know that use water? Water helps with chemical reactions, metabolism, buffering and lubrication, digestion, temperature regulation, removing excess salt, and detoxification, just to name a few absolutely essential things. Mindfulness with our water also enhances all 10 concentrations of mindful nutrition. I discussed this a bit in the first concentration, drinking lemon water every morning before consuming anything else. Drinking enough pure water can also help us to get more out of our exercise. While we can drink too much, more often it seems like we drink too little. This is harder on our digestion as we push thicker, drier food through our GI tract, requiring more energy. This can cause us some fatigue, though this cause isn't always obvious. Lack of adequate hydration can also lead to toxins and salts building up in our body. This can be another drain on our energy as our body has to work harder to process chemical reactions and eliminate waste. Being composed mostly of water, clearly there is many more reasons for staying hydrated. And finally, don't mistake just any beverage for the health benefits of the purest, clearest water you can find. While the diuretic properties of coffee and tea, for example, don't necessarily rob us of a large amount of water, that is still some small concern, but more so, pure water isn't bringing other chemicals with it and can simply be absorbed and cleanse us with less need for our bodies to adjust for additional contents like sugars, fructose, or caffeine, for some examples. The 10th concentration is really present within all of the concentrations. Meditation is really a broad term with multiple types and definitions. A common misperception is that it is sitting and not thinking and reaching a thoughtless state. Doing this is as difficult as reaching out over the sea and smoothing out all the waves. The type of meditation that I think a lot of people are most familiar with entails sitting still and quiet, and then sometimes either focusing on breath or perhaps a candle or mantra or other image. But there are many modes and ways to approach and even define meditation, so I think instead of trying to get it all out here, I will do another video all about meditation, so stay tuned for that. For our purpose here, many of these concentrations are done by being present while contemplating the concept of the given concentration. I suggest several times holding one hand over our gut. For some, this may be helpful in directing our attention in the present moment into our body. Our habits or cravings can be all up in our minds, which are not unlike time machines. What have we felt like in the past when eating or drinking this or that? How do I expect this to make me feel or not feel in the future? These are valid questions to ask. If we are mindful when asking, we want to know not just how we will feel immediately, but ongoing and for our entire lives. But cues from our body are going to happen only in the present moment. So meditating on what our bodies have to say right now is an essential characteristic of mindful nutrition. Mindfulness and being mind-bound are so different and yet so close together. A disciplined focus on the present and our purpose can easily dovetail into an array of mind stuff ready to be influenced by many voices. Who is speaking when we crave carbs, for example? Is it our microbiome or gut mind? Is it our blood sugar level? Is it intense emotion or a desire to postpone facing ourselves? Sitting with our stimulations, promptings, and mental processing in a neutral, present moment place allows us to broaden the gap between stimulus and our response to stimulus. For this reason, I would like to add to the focused meditations of all the other concentrations that we practice sitting in stillness. Are you wondering what the point of sitting in quiet stillness is? Does it seem like some strange thing people do while engaging in magical thinking, expecting mystical things to happen, while you wonder if it's not just a waste of time? Well, meditation changes our biochemistry for the better. Do you sleep well? I don't mean plenty of time, but actually deeply and without interruptions. Well, meditation can be as restful as good sleep. Do you ever feel overwhelmed with everything that you have to keep balanced and keep track of, or all the important things in your life that you have to pay a lot of attention to? Sleeping doesn't even always afford us a complete break from these kind of things. Do you remember your dreams? our minds are constantly processing our lives. Just like our bodies, our minds need rest too. The practice of meditation can result in lowered cortisol levels in our bodies, which are our stress hormones, and it can result in patience and emotional resilience. It can result in broader perspectives and our ability to see from multiple perspectives as we develop the ability to separate ourselves from our logical minds and our emotional minds without ignoring or repressing them. When we do this, we can ultimately nurture wiser minds. I intend to speak more on meditation in upcoming videos, and I always present it to my clients. If you are interested in meditation, please contact me, because I feel like it's really one of the most underrated self-care tools we have available to us that we do not have to spend a whole lot of money on or even a whole lot of time on, while the payoff is as big as compounding interest, to use a metaphor that those logical accounting type minds will understand. I have to admit, I'm finding it a challenge to wrap up this year's videos on this note. Already I want to go further on the subject of meditation, and I also want to go back and revisit a lot of the content I've already posted. I'm new to this whole vlogging thing and am finding it enjoyable, challenging, inspiring, and thought-provoking. I may make some edits to some of the earlier episodes, given that I was still learning how to use some of my equipment and learning video editing software and that kind of thing. Some of the sound quality was a little subpar when the pandemic first was ramping up and I was staying home, making do with what I had, recording in the quietest room in my full house that I could find. But I also look back on my content and I have more to say on the subjects. So I had set a goal at about a dozen of these for this year and the same for years to come. And I'm always working on musical projects too, so I've been slipping in some of my art at the end of the episodes, and I have a lot more of that to share too. I expect that in this first year of vlogging, though I have reached my goal, I'll probably be adding some more content before 2021. I've been talking to some other local musicians here in the Treasure Valley about making some music for my sovereignty sessions too, which are the musical additions at the ends of my videos. I've also been going back over my content and am constantly thinking of more I'd like to say to you. So I will conclude yet again with a request that you follow me here on this channel. And please share me with anyone you love or care about that may find interest in, perhaps benefit from the content I'm sharing. Thank you for joining me. I also really enjoy being contacted, questioned, and engaged with the subjects I'm discussing, as well as really anything to do with health, wellness, and ultimately perfecting the art of living. Until next time, cheers. If you need help with improving your resting and sleeping, please reach out to me. I can provide you with a program and support for significantly improving the depth and quality of your sleep without any use of medications. Welcome to the Sovereignty Health and Wellness Center channel. 820 begins a trilogy. It's going to illustrate a range of mindfulness, beginning from the least to the most mindful. So we're going to start with the least mindful, or mind-bound, and that's called the sleeper. Do you know anyone like this, or even sometimes resemble this yourself? Slipping into the sleeper means multitasking when eating. Sleepers will eat in their car while going about their day. They often forget what they have eaten and are hard-pressed to write down a food log from memory over just the past few days. Sleepers have very limited self-knowledge. Thus, they often have allergies, addictions, and false beliefs about nutrition and their health that have yet to be discovered. In full sleeper mode, they aren't even really very curious to find out. And by the way, that's why I suspect you aren't much of a sleeper, if you're still watching. Sleepers live more by default than deliberately, going along with habits and traditions without consulting their own body's health. They are prey to cravings and sometimes engage in self-medication with food and drink, riding ebbs and troughs of blood sugar levels, hormones, microbiotic balances, energy levels, compulsions, and emotions. They often suffer the socially acceptable addictions such as caffeine, alcohol, tobacco, sugar, etc., and maybe even other drugs. Ultimately, the sleeper rarely faces themselves or questions why they eat when their body is not hungry. So questioning and taking an interest in self-exploration and change is what moves the sleeper into the seeker. Welcome to the Sovereignty Health and Wellness Center channel. 920 will be about the seeker. Welcome to the Sovereignty Health and Wellness Center channel. I'm Chad Gold. I'm a certified health education specialist and a master NLP health and life coach. And this is the second episode in a trilogy which began with The Sleeper. In this short trilogy, I'm illustrating a simple scale of mindfulness beginning with the least mindful, sleeper archetype in episode 820 and ending with the most mindful, teacher in episode 1020. So on this scale of relative degrees of mindfulness, the seeker is in the middle, more mindful and aware than the sleeper. Asking questions is what sets the seeker apart from the sleeper. Questioning is the path towards the teacher's awareness. I might assume that most of this audience are seekers and some teachers. Someone in full sleeper mode would likely not be very interested in what I had to say, unless they were maybe on the verge of becoming more of a seeker. Now I want to insert here that instead of using this simple model to label ourselves and others, we deliberately seek value in increasing our mindfulness when it comes to self-care and in general as we seek to perfect our art of living. I also want us to use this idea to be able to watch for those moments when we slip into the sleeper mode. And then I would like to offer that we can go a long way with this kind of concentration. There is a sort of peaceful vigilance to be accessed in the mode of the teacher, which I will talk about in the next episode. I don't see life as just an ascending stairway to heaven or enlightenment in some linear story arc. Of course, we can move back and forth on a scale of mindfulness. We're all waking up from a dream as seekers and teachers alike. Now, if we ever feel like we've arrived, let's ask ourselves if we may have instead crystallized into the pattern of a new dream. And let's not stop asking questions. The seeker archetype in us is the scientist, while the sleeper is not as interested in the scientific method. They may come up for air from their ocean of unconsciousness now and then for a breath of awareness, briefly entertaining lines of questioning that they do not follow for very long before sinking back into the dream world of addictions, habits, immediate gratifications, and escapism. The seeker entertains more disciplined, systematic ways to ask questions or hypothesize and then test theories or attempt to find answers and apply them to themselves. Please, when it comes to your healthcare, don't stop asking clarifying questions of your own self. Ask your body, mind, and emotions about your self-diagnoses. There are so many perfectly valid suggestions available to us now for how to maintain and improve our health. They can work for the highly educated person representing and presenting the information and thousands or even millions of other people that make their advice work for them, and yet it may not work as well for you. So the sleeper doesn't ask questions like you do. Do you remember becoming a seeker? I suspect some of you have always been curious. Still, we've all also fallen asleep or become less mindful at times. I hope it doesn't take our body raising its voice to the pitch of chronic disease to start waking up and questioning our habits and beliefs about our health. You know, we're not all created equal. As for the Founding Fathers' document, of course we understand that that statement really meant things like equal liberty. But when it comes to our health, we are bombarded by many mythical one-size-fits-all suggestions for how to improve and maintain our health. A sleeper would fall for these myths, while the seeker would also question them. But seekers can jump from one myth to another fad diet or self-care philosophy in their quest to know what works best for them. We come in many different body types. There are many theories born of research into things like blood types, metabolic types, or the doshas of Ayurveda. A seeker gets to know themselves and discover things like sensitivities or sometimes allergies. They become familiar with their health profile and fluctuations through the seasons, hormone balances, and what helps or hinders their well-being. A seeker explores their physical and mental health. They also think of a few moves ahead on the chessboard of life, seeking out ways to make improvements to their health. Perhaps they have seen signs of deterioration that inspire them to want to turn things around before they get worse. Or they may enjoy good health and just want to maintain it even as they go through their aging changes. Seekers invest in their future health profile in the twilight years of their life. You will notice in working with me or following me that I offer ideas that I have confirmed work for people. They also need to be explored personally before assuming they are the answer for you. This is the path of the seeker. You get to know that one method, recipe, routine, or meditation that works for others doesn't fit you as well as another, and you find more and more that does work for you personally. My clients perfect the art of the experienced seeker and move towards and into the mode of the teacher. We don't just go on the popular fad diet of the day, assuming it works for everyone, for example. And in athletics, we don't just engage in a series of sprints so much as we look at our fitness more like a lifelong marathon. We may uncover sensitivities, mental blocks, restrictive habits, and deceptive beliefs, even as we replace these with delicious and nutrient-dense, clean, pure foods, routines, and self-talk. So it sounds like the perfection of the seeker mindset is personally perfecting the art of living. What could be better? Well, as we'll see in the next episode, the teacher archetype never ceases to be a seeker. Thank you for joining me in entertaining this model of mindfulness. After listening to the sleeper, seeker, and the teacher next, reach out to me and let me know what you think about this scale and what it brings up for you. Do you feel like you resemble one or more than the other? If you notice that you sometimes slip into the sleeper mode, what do you feel is putting you to sleep? And what wakes you up? How about the people in your life that you love and care about? Remember, try not to label yourself or anyone these titles. No one is in a static place on the scale of mindfulness. We can be gliding along like a savvy seeker, growing and improving and become more mindful when suddenly trauma seems to set us back. Or something from our past may be a trigger that we aren't fully aware of, and we catch ourselves as if waking from some cloudy dream with a mouthful of sweet poison and a mind full of guilt. And maybe we've been on this poisonous binge for days, weeks, or months before we start feeling aches, insomnia, fatigue, anxiety, depression, or worse. When we wake up again, let's not linger in guilt or despair. The only way out of a loveless hole is forgiveness and self-love. We are the only ones that can do this. So before it ever gets too deep, let's start caring for ourselves now. Cheers. Welcome to the Sovereignty Health and Wellness Center channel. I am Chad Gold. I'm a certified health education specialist and a master NLP health and life coach. This episode is the finale in a 3-part group of videos. If you haven't seen 820 and 920, I recommend them for clarifying this one, though I will summarize a bit here. In the 3 videos, I am illustrating a simple scale of relative mindfulness composed of 3 archetypal modes that we can all find ourselves in throughout our lives. I call the least mindful mode the sleeper. I don't expect hardly any of you to be mostly living in the sleeper mode because sleepers are not curious, inquisitive, or interested in growing and expanding their consciousness. They eat whatever tastes good, even when their body is not hungry. They are not aware of things like their habits and addictions to foods and other self-medication, or even thought patterns and beliefs that compromise their health. Ultimately, sleepers do not ask why they may feel tired for no apparent reason, why they cannot sleep well or wake up sore and foggy instead of clear and ready to start their day. They are not curious about how to improve or maintain optimal health, and they do not see a connection between what they consume or how they balance movement and rest with how vibrant, alive, and conscious they feel. Questioning and thinking a few moves ahead on the chessboard of life is what sets the second mode I call the seeker apart from the sleeper mode. The seeker seeks to know why they feel the way they do and what foods, activities, routines, habits, thoughts, and beliefs affect how they feel. Seekers are more curious and inquisitive, and though they may believe many different things, they all believe that it may be possible to find ways to significantly improve their health and well-being. Being a masterful seeker can feel like an ultimate goal after many things have been tried and tested in the spirit of the scientist. A more experienced seeker can have a lot of things identified personally about themselves. They know more about what foods, activities, and even situations, people, and thoughts affect their health and feeling of well-being, for better or worse. They start to see movement and eventually reach goals such as a healthy BMI, reduced inflammation, reduced symptoms of sensitivities and allergies, better sleep, less anxiety or depression, and better memory and mental clarity, for some examples. Realizing these things may feel like arriving at the ultimate reward for consistent efforts at self-care and health improvement. As such a seasoned seeker, one is right at the turning point, ready to become a teacher. Now, I'm not implying that someone in this most mindful teacher mode is defined by actually taking on a formal teaching role, but a person with a lot of experience as a seeker who has also achieved results in transforming their body, mind, and overall health is certainly capable of sharing what they learned with other seekers. I would also recommend to any seeker that they teach what they learn to others, not only to enrich the lives of the people they love and care about by helping them to increase their mindfulness, but in so doing, they also strengthen their own foundation of mindfulness. So what is the difference between this teacher mode and the seeker mode? Like most experienced seekers, teachers have been finding answers and asking more questions for a very long time. They know a lot more about what does and doesn't work for them. In contrast to the seeker, the teacher has achieved significant results in transforming their body and overall health status, but have also been able to maintain this without major fluctuations over a long period of time. They may have felt that feeling as if they have arrived at the finish line reaching fitness or body composition goals like seekers eventually can. But teachers have found a way of life to maintain their higher level of health and well-being. Seekers will still fluctuate more. They're learning as much what doesn't work for them as what does. And they're still pulled in many directions in their quest to perfect the art of living through self-care. They can crystallize around ideas for a while, such as fad diets, or even get sucked into the hype of pop science. Seekers can also sometimes easily fall prey to the supplement industry. Teachers know that they will always be seekers, but they are calmer about it. There is a sort of peaceful vigilance that comes over the seeker as they become as mindful as the teacher. Not only have they answered many of their big questions, but they have built a foundation of principles, priorities, and values that contribute to a less anxious way of life. This foundation really is a big difference between the teacher and the seeker modes. It is something that is universal in their lives, not just in how they balance eating, moving, resting, and sleeping, but also in their relationships with themselves, others close to them, and the world. Teachers have looked themselves in the eye and confronted things about themselves that are more difficult to face. One of the reasons that we can slip back into the sleeper mode is this challenge. It can be so much easier to escape into indulgences and immediate gratifications that effectively distract us from courageous introspection than it is to sit fully present and conscious of ourselves. At the core of things like addictions or compulsive emotional eating, for example, is a resistance to being present with ourselves. The less mindful we are, the more our attention can be unconsciously directed away from the aspects of ourselves that are uncomfortable. We may tell ourselves we are listening to our bodies, for example, when we crave slow poisons still considered by most people as food, when those things can actually resemble drugs more than food. Please be careful of that popular saying, listen to your body. When our microbiome is in a healthy balance, like it is for teachers, and we know how to interpret our urges and cravings for what our bodies actually want, then it can be a fine saying. But if your gut is overpopulated by microorganisms that feed on refined simple sugars and grains, for example, they will actually influence our moods and cravings to preserve themselves. So who is really talking when we listen to our body? Is it our blood sugar level, enzyme balances, ratios between aerobic and anaerobic microorganisms, or even the balances of neurotransmitters our brains use, many of which are produced in the gut? We get significant changes in our moods from eating, because eating can calm our nerves or spike our blood sugar for a short, quick pick-me-up, especially accompanied by caffeine. It is easy to overdo these things. In the teacher mode, we step off the insulin roller coaster riding ebbs and troughs of blood sugar levels, and the highs and lows that come from other kinds of self-medication too. Let's consider another common way a sleeper will self-medicate. Some teachers do not drink alcohol at all, while others can do so in moderation without suffering its downside or slipping into addiction. But I want you to understand what this feeling is that drinking alcohol produces in the context of mindfulness. The feeling many people love from this drug is escape from themselves. It is escape from the discomforts of inflammation and soreness, even as it thins our blood and temporarily reduces the pressures from swelling. So we get a temporary reprieve from some of our aches and pains. Psychologically, it also helps us to escape from some of our fears that manifest in the form of social anxieties. This feels wonderful at first, but I know we're all familiar with how we can cross a line with this and regret it. How is embarrassing ourselves, for example, going to contribute to the social anxiety we have in sobriety? And then we might use this to drown our sorrows. Sadness and grief can find us in a place where it is painful to face ourselves and process these intense emotions that originate in our mind. Numbing this with self-medication seems to make sense when we just can't simply reason our way out of the pain. But the only way beyond the pain is through it. So drinking alcohol can eventually end up prolonging the pain we are avoiding. Now let's talk about the chemistry. The high we feel from drinking alcohol may make it seem like it is something other than the depressant that it is. When we have aches or anxieties that make us feel heavy and tired, This depressant can actually feel more like a stimulant for a while, as it numbs those exhausting influences. We all know this high is temporary, of course. We also know there's a downside, but it's not just the hangover. For those few hours of sometimes blissful escape, there can be days to pay. This can create a vicious cycle where this depressant leaves us anxious or down the next few days. It is these times that we can crave the short-term relief of the long-term depressant, and if we continue to drink, we just dig ourselves a deeper hole. The ultimate takeaway from this ratio between feeling good for a few hours and feeling worse for days is that as amazing as the high feels, we are actually feeling worse for more of our lives than we're feeling better. The reason why we continue this seemingly counterintuitive behavior is that we go more unconscious and less mindful. This can spill over into every aspect of our lives. This is a good extreme example of what the teacher mode realizes and has rejected. There are so many other examples, though, of how we escape sitting in the present moment with ourselves. We may work too hard and avoid having a social life. We may eat when our body is not hungry, feeling another kind of numbness. Or we may succumb to any form of obsessions, habits, and addictions that divorce our minds from our bodies and postpone our difficult introspective work. An experienced seeker is seeing these things for what they are. They really get familiar with their personal work. We can recognize a teacher as someone who has done the work and maintained a higher level of physical, mental, and emotional health over the years. Teachers realize they will always be seekers, though they rarely slip very far down the scale of mindfulness, even when life's dealer deals out traumatic cards. Thus they seem to most of us like the people that really have their life together. They seem even and consistent in their moods and perspectives compared to most people. In closing this three-part model, I want you to know that this is really central to the work that I do with my clients. Though I am also available session by session, I recommend entertaining the idea of my longer programs too. I describe my services in some detail in episode 620. As a health and life coach, clients consult me for a variety of topics and challenges, from sleeplessness and anxiety to relationships or weight loss, for some examples. Over my 7 years in doing this, most have begun work with me wanting to gain control of their weight. Most weight loss programs can show the initial results of reaching a goal BMI. Many do this with extreme measures, sometimes including surgery or often incorporating drugs and supplements. As this industry realizes that these methods are most often not sustainable, they will even make claims that you will not just lose weight, but keep it off. Some superior programs back up these claims and offer natural, drug-free methods like I do. This is what you want to look for if you're really willing to do the work to transform your body, mind, and emotions from your present state to one of higher energy, deeper, more rejuvenating relaxation and sleep, clearer focus and expressive creativity, abundance, joy, and empathy for the rest of your life. In my programs, I don't simply help you plan what to eat or how to move and relax, and how to count all those measurable things like pounds and calories. My coaching philosophy incorporates helping you to become your own health coach for life. This means that I help you to become the teacher. Thank you for hearing me out here, and please contact me with any comments or questions on it. I'm really interested in hearing where you feel you find yourself on this scale. Having listened to the whole presentation here, I know that though you may slip into the sleeper from time to time, that you have a strong foundation in the seeker mode. And if you're often a teacher, you'll know that you straddle the two higher, more mindful modes and only rarely slip into the sleeper mode. Well, that's all for now, but I have more to come. The next model I will present is a bit longer, so I think I will divide it into 3 videos also. I have a workshop I am eager to present when we can all feel comfortable again gathering in groups in the Sovereignty Center here in Boise, Idaho. It's called Mindful Nutrition, and will elaborate on this scale of mindfulness as well as what I'm calling my 10 concentrations for mindful nutrition. Please click that follow button and watch for more videos about this subject. And take a look at my channel. I already have several videos available, and if you're interested in the content, please let me know. Also, consider the people in your life that you love and care about. Would anyone that you know be interested in the subjects that I speak to, or would they benefit from this information? Please share me with them. Cheers. Welcome to the Sovereignty Health and Wellness Center channel. I'm Chad Gold. I'm a certified health education specialist and master NLP health and life coach. In the next 3 videos, I'll be talking about mindful nutrition. I'll be providing 10 concentrations designed to increase mindfulness in eating and drinking. In this video, I'll introduce the first 4 of the 10 concentrations. The first is drinking lemon water every morning before consuming anything else. The second is not eating in secret. The third is to sit and eat without distractions. And the fourth is to eat when your body is hungry. So the first concentration is a good habit to get into every day for the rest of our lives. After a night's sleep, if we have eaten enough the day before, but not too much, we'll likely have had ample time to digest our last meal, moving things like insoluble fiber all the way down into our large intestines. Water is absorbed there from the substances in our food that we have not yet absorbed into our bloodstream. Many chemical reactions occur in the process of digestion. Only the smaller, simpler forms of nutrients can pass through the walls of the GI tract to enter our blood, so everything has to be broken down. That first drink of lemon water in the morning primes the body for the day. It moves byproducts from chemical reactions along with the substances we haven't absorbed further down the tract to be eliminated. We probably haven't had a drink for nearly 8 hours unless we got up to drink during the night. Water is used for thousands and thousands of chemical reactions in our metabolism. A lot of us go right for things like coffee and tea in the morning. I know I did for years. Believe it or not, though there is obviously water in these beverages, they are not good substances for hydrating our bodies. Instead, they actually result in water moving through and out of us. This is not the kind of water that we hold on to. The lemon is a nice cleansing component. Sometimes even if you currently wake up sore, heavy, foggy, groggy, and tired, this practice can have an energizing effect on us before we consume anything with caffeine. With mindfulness as our concentration, try this for a couple of weeks and let me know how you feel. Have a pitcher of the purest, cleanest water you can get waiting in your fridge for you in the morning. Squeeze a quarter of lemon into it and then let the rest of it just steep in the pitcher. If you like cucumber, I also like to add some sliced cucumber into the water. Another variant could be to add a few thin shavings of raw ginger or some fresh mint. Before taking anything else in, sit with a tall glass of your water and breathe just a little deeper and slower. Put one hand over your stomach as you drink and close your eyes if it helps you to concentrate on feeling the water move down your throat and into your stomach. How far down can you feel the water travel before you lose track of it? A graphical representation of your GI tract may help you to imagine what's going on inside of you. Find one that you like and look at it in the morning. Why do we want to do this? It is so easy to get all up in our heads so much that we can get separated from feeling our bodies. Our bodies have so much to tell us about how we are caring for them. If we are not mindful of our bodies, we will miss some of the very subtle, personal cues. Our bodies may not use words, but we do, and our bodies can understand them because of how words make us think and feel. which are occurrences accompanied by chemical reactions. What do you have to say to your body? The second concentration is to decide that eating is no secret. You may not do this overtly or even at all, but if you do, this concentration is for you. Some people just sneak a snack or a meal now and then that they deliberately do not let anyone else around them know about. Some go as far as hiding snacks near their beds or computers, but this isn't always so overt. Have you ever just sat down to a meal and tried to remember what else you ate that day and couldn't? This concentration isn't just about uncovering whether you hide eating from others. More importantly, do you hide it from yourself? In taking on this concentration for a while, you may want to keep a food log. I also like some of the free programs available for logging food, because they often will also have a way of tracking athletic activity levels too. I'm not advocating becoming obsessed with constantly counting calories versus energy spent and exercise or weighing ourselves all the time. I do, however, suggest doing this for a little while, just to give ourselves a more acute sense of what we're doing. Remember, slipping into unconsciousness and forgetting can mean that our unconscious urges and cravings can be misinterpreted, and we can end up eating when our bodies are not hungry. The third concentration is to sit with your eating without distractions. I understand that eating is a social thing, but even when you're out to eat, take a moment to put one hand on your gut, close your eyes, smell and taste your food. When not in a social situation, find a place to sit quietly and concentrate on paying more attention to your eating and drinking. Even if we aren't hiding our eating, I think we've all eaten on the run or while multitasking. If we're really in this and want to gain mastery over mindful nutrition, then we want to be as conscious as we can when eating. If we do this, we will not miss what our bodies have to say about what we are feeding them. Now, if this seems very impractical or difficult, I would suggest to you that you may be falling into the habit of eating when your body is not hungry. That is the fourth concentration. Make a note to yourself when this concentration seems difficult or impractical. Our bodies can be satiated, and yet we can still have some intense urges and cravings. As we go through these concentrations, take some time and decide to entertain them all. Or take one or a few of them at a time if you'd like, and follow them for a few days or a week or two. Shop for your food when you're not hungry. Plan food more for your body than your taste buds, while remembering that your taste buds are very much a part of your body. Ultimately, this concentration looks like an ongoing perfection of the balance between the most nutritious and delicious foods. This part will be an ongoing project, of course. To start, when you eat, again put your hand over your gut and direct your attention in its place. Ask your gut, your nerves, your blood sugar, enzyme and microorganism balances how they feel about what you are eating as you eat. I'm sure you can already see how these concentrations are interrelated. Eating what your body wants and when it is actually hungry can help kick the habit of hiding your consumptions from yourself and maybe from others. And all of this can have an influence on how you think and feel every morning when you mindfully follow that pure, clean water from your tall glass to your stomach and beyond. You may still be asking, what's the point of all of this? We can all tend to do things unconsciously. We can distract ourselves from our body and get all up in our heads sometimes. Though this doesn't always translate into compulsive or emotional eating when our body is not hungry, it can happen in many other ways too. Someone may work so much in a job they may not like and avoid having a social life when they long to move forward in a different career or have deeper, more meaningful, loving relationships. Someone may not realize they have certain manipulative communication styles when they just want to be able to have mutually empathetic conversations with people they love and care about. Someone may have some very difficult and traumatic memories and avoid anything that may bring thoughts and feelings up around the memory of that trauma, when they're also avoiding new experiences that they may otherwise find very fulfilling and satisfying. I know these can be very vulnerable and sensitive subjects, but do you notice anything like these examples in yourself or someone you know? Can you think of other examples where we catch ourselves with a blind spot we do not want to face? You know that's normal and common, right? The point of all this is that the practice of mindfulness regarding nutrition is an excellent way to practice mindfulness in all aspects of our lives. It helps us to increase our awareness and our health and well-being. These concentrations help us to take our sovereignty back from the things like habits we've adopted in less conscious states that seem to take control of us. Practicing these concentrations is usually difficult at first. They get easier, though, in proportion to your level of compliance with them. Familiarize yourself with these concentrations as we go through them, and take a couple of weeks or even a month to adopt them. And this is very important. Don't entertain any guilt if you catch yourself in the sleeper mode, which I've detailed primarily in episode 820, but also in contrast with more mindful modes in 920 and 1020. Instead, journal, log, or somehow remember just how mindful you have been and contemplate how mindful you can be. Just start easy with it and make your primary goal to familiarize yourself with these methods of becoming more and more aware of just how aware we are. If you make this a way of life, I am confident that you will experience significant movements towards a clearer, healthier, and happier life. If you want to center yourself in a higher degree of health and reach and maintain, for example, a healthy weight for you personally, the 10 concentrations of mindful nutrition will help you realize these goals. Thank you for joining me. The next episode, 1220, will elaborate on the concentrations 5 through 7. 5 is eating what our body really wants. 6, stop eating 3/4 to full. And 7, more home-cooked meals from scratch. Cheers. Welcome to the Sovereignty Health and Wellness Center channel. I'm Chad Gold. I'm a certified health education specialist and a master NLP health and life coach. This is the second in another trio of episodes. They present 10 ideas that I call concentrations. The purpose of concentrating on these ideas is minimizing compulsive or emotional eating. It is also designed for eating for our bodies instead of things like our moods, blood sugar levels, or the comfortable numbness we can get from being overstuffed regularly. Ultimately, the 10 concentrations are for being so mindful with our eating and drinking that we balance enjoyment with optimal nutrition for higher energy, calmness, patience, better sleep, alertness, and well-being. In short, the 10 concentrations for mindful nutrition are for the best health and the best life we can live all the way through our twilight years. Mindfulness is being present. If we are present when we eat, we can hear what our whole body has to say. In episode 1120, I concluded with the fourth concentration, which is to eat when our bodies are hungry. I made the distinction between when our minds associate a craving with how it makes us feel when it moves through our mouths. You know, these tongues of ours are equipped with these taste buds for enjoying a variety of delicious culinary sensations. These sensations can also warn us if food may be going bad. We associate a lot of reactions to different tastes. They can remind us of something that made us feel bad or wonderful and energized from eating them. Eating can make us feel more calm and relaxed. It can distract us from unpleasant emotions. Eating certain foods can give us spikes in our blood sugar, inspire us to perspire, remind us of home or people we love for whom we've eaten the same foods with, or make us feel heavy, sedated, and drowsy. With this range of influences our eating has on us, it's easy to see why we would crave some things more than others. It's also easy to see why some of us can get so much pleasure or numbness and sedation from eating more than our body really wants. The fifth concentration continues from eating when our body wants to eating what our bodies want. We may be quite used to, for example, very salty foods. We can get so used to this that we find things bland without it. We do need salt, but we get it naturally in things like the skins of apples or in celery. For some of us, our health could be improved with a reduction of salt consumption. The other benefit to not heavily salting our food is that we can actually taste a broader range of subtle flavors when they're not overtaken by the salt. Sugars are like that too. We get used to salting and sweetening our food to the extreme. If we get used to this, we will start to crave it because our blood sugar is going up and down throughout the day. And if you add caffeine to that, the fluctuation can be quite extreme. So we crave certain foods we associate with feelings resulting in more immediate, temporary sensations. Now this is important. The more healthy and balanced our bodies are, the more we can trust our cravings and impulses. That's right, you can balance things like the ratio of sugar-loving aerobic microorganisms with anaerobic microorganisms in our gut, with the result that we don't crave sugars as much. We can also get used to a lower salt content in our foods and over time not crave salt as much. I'm just giving you some of many examples of how we can sometimes misinterpret what we think we want for our mouths and our minds for what our whole body wants. Again, this concentration asks us to put our hands on our gut, close our eyes, and really be present with our eating. Remember how these sensations from these foods have made you feel in the past. Concentrate on how it feels immediately when eating, as well as for the next day and over time. If we are more mindful of both short and long-term cues from our bodies in the presence or absence of certain foods, we'll become experts in choosing what feels best for us. Do certain delicious foods keep you awake at night? If you eat a little earlier, is it better, or is it just the same regardless of when you ate it? Are there ever changes in your mental clarity or the clarity of your sinuses and respiratory system when you eat certain foods? Health seekers can use this concentration to uncover useful information about themselves. They can identify food sensitivities or discover what balances of nutrients energize them more than weigh them down. If we do not engage in this concentration, we can slip into the sleeper mode and be eating and drinking in ways that compromise our health. And as sleepers, we don't get the benefit of knowing what is causing things like fatigue, anxiety, brain fog, or sleeplessness, for some examples. So for the fifth concentration, sit present with your food. Also remember how you feel through the whole day and ongoing. The sixth concentration is also closely related to the fourth, where the fourth concentration has us practicing being mindful of when we are really hungry. The sixth has us being mindful of when enough is enough. For some of us, being in the throes of stimulation from eating can feel so good that we do not want to stop. Do you ever remember being a child and adults telling you to finish your plate? Maybe it wasn't others that drove this home for you. Were there plenty of times in your life where you felt lacking in food or other resources like money? Perhaps the lack wasn't as tangible, but just as emotionally memorable, like the lack of attention, empathy, or appreciation. When eating can feel so satisfying, it can be difficult to stop if there is still food on our plates. Of course, even that doesn't always stop us. You won't be surprised to hear me asking you to, yet again, to hold one hand over your gut when you eat. For this concentration, let go of the idea that you have to finish your plate. Be mindful of the almost drug-like feeling some particularly delicious and satisfying food has on you. Acknowledge your abundance. Be thankful that you have enough food when you do. Be present with your eating and don't eat so fast. Your personal pace is your own, but just make a note of if you feel like you're eating fast, to slow down enough that it feels a little slower. Do you remember the first concentration where I asked you to feel cool, clean water moving into your stomach? This concentration is for doing that with the food you eat. How full do you feel? If you could place your level of satiety on a scale from 1 to 20, 20 being uncomfortably overstuffed and 1 being ravenously hungry, where are you after you've eaten, say, half of the food on your plate? While this concentration is not as difficult for some, I want you to know that if it is very difficult for you to put your spoon or your fork down, you are not alone. If you find you are looking at what is left on your plate and you have to admit that you feel about 3/4 full, and it is a major feat of willpower not to finish the food or even go for more, you have some important practicing to do. The good news is that it gets a lot easier the more you comply with the 3/4 to full goal. And each time you lay down that fork with food left on your plate, it gets easier as you let go of that conditioning you've endured for so many years of your life. The 7th concentration is going to be very helpful with the 5th concentration. This again is going to be very easy concentration for some and a very new practice for others. So the 7th concentration is to commit to making at least one home-cooked meal from scratch every day. If you eat out a lot, or eat a lot of prepackaged and processed foods, this may be a major undertaking. The benefits of the 7th concentration to our health are many. When determining what our body wants most, knowing precisely what our food is composed of is very important. Also, making food from scratch, from fresh whole foods, means eating less preservatives, dyes, and other chemicals. Preparing food is a very useful skill that can be developed to the level of artistry. It can be satisfying while bringing people together and bolstering our confidence in our ability to care for ourselves and others. I suggest, whether you fall deeply in love with the art of food preparation or just love to eat, that you nurture this art form to the extent that you can prepare a broader variety of foods than you currently do. This allows you to do things like experiment with things to make healthy foods delicious, or try new things that can nourish us and contribute to our health. Variety is also good for making sure we are getting our essential nutrients. I will introduce concentrations 8 through 10 in the next episode, number 1320. But before I close here, I want to add a concept from episode 1020 where I talk about a mindful mode I call the teacher. When we are learning a skill such as food preparation, it is very helpful not only for others, but for ourselves to engage in teaching. We remember a lot more about cooking when we share. When we prepare food together, we are expanding our experience tremendously. I feel that this is one of the most important things we can share with young people in particular. Seek to foster an appreciation for delicious and healthy foods. Share what you learn and be open to experimentation. Also, do not propagate this idea that we want to eat when our bodies are not hungry in order to finish the last of this or that food. Get used to saving leftovers. Also, practice serving up a moderate amount of food instead of just piling up the largest plate we can. Thank you for joining me for this episode. I have one more in this series where I introduce these concentrations. Number 8 is to enjoy food. Of course, this again requires us to be fully present. Number 9 is to balance our eating with resting, activity, and hydration. And number 10 is meditation, which is what we are doing with all of these concentrations. And until then, cheers. So I plan to continue doing my remote sessions with the $20 for a session. And I'm going to postpone the workshops for a little while longer. Current events. So I was just thinking about current events, and I think there's a trap that we fall into, and it is that we're saturated with a lot of information, and we form beliefs from those, and that's fine, we all do it. I think the trap that is dividing us, or one of them, may just be that we mistake these beliefs for knowing something. Why is that a bad thing? Well, I think we're not seeing our conversations and our debates to the end because of it. Instead, we're writing each other off. So, we all have beliefs. Let's just not mistake them for knowledge. So workshops are on hold for a little bit longer. I'm still meeting individually with people in the Sovereignty Center, and I'm emphasizing the remote sessions still. So if you would like to speak with me, check out the website, which is sovereigntyhealth.com. It also has a link to my blog on WordPress, and it also has a link to this YouTube channel.